Come here, come here. Okay, what do the following things have in common? Tattoo sleeves, corporate boards, justice for women and children, and fried shrimp. You're about to find out on this episode featuring the Honorable Judge Rosie Speedlin Gonzalez. So this is a conversation that I keep having. When I was a kid, my parents, one of them was a Democrat, one was a Republican, and their friends were running for elective office and doing these things, and we would support. It didn't matter what side they were on; we would go because they were friends. And at the table, we would have conversations about politics and religion, and they were civil. What is it, do you think, that has changed that makes us unable to do that in most situations now?
Honestly, I think it's the World Wide Web and the internet. You and I grew up in a time where that commercial came on at 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Right? You and I knew that at midnight, we saw that little doo on the screen, right? All the stations went off the air, and none of them came back on till 6 in the morning until Linda Ellerby came on with Turner Broadcasting. And I remember Linda Ellerby because that's when I saved my money from working at the skating rink to buy myself a little TV set that I could have in my bedroom and I could watch all night long. And I just followed Linda Ellerby. And so you go Linda Ellerby and beyond, and now you get into the 90s and the World Wide Web. And when we were kids, it took a week, maybe two, to find out there had been a tsunami in Bali, right? We didn't know the magnitude of devastation across the world, right? Now you get a live feed of what's happening. The world has literally shrunk before our eyes. You and I had to go to the library and go through the catalog index to find information we needed for our research papers that we had to type, right? Now, what's a library, right? Unless you want to go in and get air conditioning and access Wi-Fi. Now, all you do is you pick up your phone and there's your World Book Encyclopedia, which our parents provided for me and my brother, and we were the cool
Yeah,
kids on the
yeah,
block
I've
because
got mine. Yeah.
we had the black and brown one with the gold edging. We had the fancy one, and of course the most used book was the S because that had sex in it, and it showed you all the anatomically correct parts and everything. Anyway, I think that's what's wrong. I think people, it's easier for someone to get spoon fed something than to do the hard work to educate yourself and to look at all angles. It's just too much work and too much time. When you can just get on TikTok or get on a social media app and read incessantly, nonstop, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, and it's nonstop information coming this way. And that's all of a sudden you're an expert on what? You're opining because you're behind a screen and you're safe. And we are watching our youth, our kids, come into our fold of living as adults with that an inability to socialize, an inability to have a conversation with an individual or make eye contact, and high levels of anxiety, high levels of maladaptive behaviors and depression because they haven't left their house or their room in weeks and don't know how to interact with other people in the world, whether it's their family, their neighbors at school. And I think we're doing a huge disservice to our children. And I tell people, your kid, and I learned this from a therapist, your kid doesn't need a phone unless they're 16 and now you're having to figure out where they're at in the car you let them drive, because before that you should know where they're at and who they're with.
Yeah. And they should never have unrestricted internet. I just
I
don't
agree.
understand.
People talk about sex trafficking and I warn them this is the portal to hell. I said, you want your kid to be tapped into by a pedophile, a sex offender, you give them a phone, unfettered access to whatever they want. And there will be a sex offender, a pedophile reaching out to them within hours, posing as a child, enticing them to meet them down the street at the 7-Eleven to get an ice cream or a Slurpee. And there goes your child.
Oh my gosh. Something else that makes you unique is as a judge is, the tattoos. So, and, I think if I was in your courtroom as a defendant, it may make me relax a little bit and think, "Okay, wait a minute. She's, clearly it thinks a little bit differently than other judges do because a lot of judges don't have that. So tell me the story behind how that started.
It started with my desire to connect with my dad. My dad had a cross, a very rudimentary, crude, you knew it was like Indian ink kind of cross on his forearm. And the desire to have a tattoo stemmed from there. And my first tattoo I got when I was in law school, I was already 33. And I did a lot of things after I kind of felt like I was out from under the control of my parents. And so law school was the first one, and it just grew from there. And they're not all over my body, they're just on my arms, and there's one on my chest and a couple on my back, and that's, I lie, I've got one on each my calves now. And I think I'm done. uh and um it just kind of all the tattoos I have are original art. They're not something out of a book or a stencil. And it just kind of I highlight women, and like I have an Aztec warrior princess on one arm. I have a painting by a woman, Adriana Garcia, of a woman, and she named it Standing Tall because it's a 7 foot painting that I got transferred onto my arm. And I like to prove people wrong. And so that was another comment I got early on. You're never going to get elected with tattoos. What kind of judge would that be? And I'm like, how does that affect my ability to think and reason and, critically analyze things and have good judgment just because I choose to have artwork on my body? So, I prove the naysayers wrong, and I make people uncomfortable, and I see it as that's their issue, not mine. And
Thing that you put a lot of time into, and it took you a couple of years to do it, is the pride flag in your courtroom. And there's a lot written about that. And so I wanted to ask, and I know this seems like a obvious question, but what was it about that made you want to fight until it happened?
Well, I think what folks need to understand is that in the heart of Texas, in Bexar County, I was in 2018 the first and only openly gay countywide candidate to win their election as a countywide elected official. That was huge for our community. Now, I will have to say this. There were in the past LGBT judges, but they were not out. They were not out for political reasons. They were not out for safety reasons. I had good friends on the bench, and they were afraid to come out for fear of retribution, of harm being threatened to them. And so we had to keep that tapped down and secret, not public. Now, I was told when I ran the first time in 2010, the second time in 2014, I would never, ever win as an out candidate. I was told by my own party, and I'm a Democrat. Um, and then lo and behold, I win in 2018. And it was a huge accomplishment for the LGBT community in San Antonio. Why is that important? Because San Antonio is home to the largest number per capita of same-sex families in the whole country. And it's that because we value family, and we don't care what family looks like as long as children are loved and taken care of. And they look to me as this is a community of over 60% Latinos. So I'm Latina, I'm LGBT, and that impacts into many areas of our community. And so when I was sworn in as judge, a local LULAC chapter, the League of United Latin American Citizens, the Orgullo Council of LULAC. Orgullo translates into pride in Spanish. The Pride Council of LULAC locally gifted me at my swearing in this pride flag. And I was also gifted an American flag that was brought in. She marched in the colors to my swearing in by a combat vet who was also LGBT. So I have the American flag and the rainbow flag, the pride flag, right outside my chambers. I felt compelled. I felt I had a duty to post that flag in the courtroom, um, off to the side, not next to the American or state flag, but a few feet to the side, because the pride flag is a symbol of equality. Equality. It's not a symbol of gayness. It's a symbol of equality. And what better place to hang and display a symbol of equality, equal justice, than in a courtroom? Of course, some people didn't agree with that, and they filed their complaints. And I was at that time disciplined by the Judicial Commission, and was instructed to not only take my flag down, I had to remove all rainbows from the courtroom, whether that was my mouse pad, a pen I was using, my glasses, or my robe, which had a little strip of sarape, not a rainbow, but sarape, multicolored sarape right across this way. I could not wear that robe on the bench, I was told. And what was the clincher for me on that order from the commission was that they barred me from being a visiting judge after I retired from the bench. It didn't matter if I retired after 4 years or after 20 years. They said I could not be a visiting judge anywhere. And that's why I truly appealed the decision by the commission. And I got a great attorney, Deanna Whitley, and we fought it and fought it, and we appealed it. And they wanted to hear us on Zoom during COVID, and we said no. We want to be heard in person in Austin at the Supreme Court of Texas. And we waited. And so they appoint 3 judges to hear your case. When COVID started, the breakdown was two conservative judges, 1 progressive judge. By the time COVID was over, it was 2 progressive judges and 1 conservative judge. And that helped us, I think. And because they're elected as well, and they have to answer to their constituents. In addition to, they believed it was an infringement of my rights. So people asked me why it's not in the courtroom again, and I said, we've made our point, and it doesn't need to be in the courtroom for me to continue to make my point. The whole world knows how I was treated by the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct, and it sits outside my chambers. And from time to time, I'll wear the robe that they said I couldn't wear in the courtroom. I have my mouse pad back up there, and it's no secret who I am and what communities I represent on that bench, just as who I am inherently. And so we've done what we set out to do. And I sit on the board of the San Antonio AIDS Foundation. That's another board I sit on. And I sit on another board for an educational nonprofit. And it's all about trying to find ways to improve the quality of life for different sections of our community. And so I continue to do it. I was just at a board meeting last night. I have a board meeting next week. And so I space them out different weeks as different boards. And I work here all day, and then I go and do my volunteer work. And people ask me, how do you have so much energy? And it's like, I like what I do. When you like what I do, it's fun, you know?
Yeah,
And you know what, Jen? I don't believe that a single person wakes up in the morning and says, let me find a way to go to jail today. I'm going to find a way to end up in jail tonight. Not a single person does that. People end up in jail due to poor decisions many times, and other times because they're triggered. And if you talk to a lot of our participants, they'll tell you, I don't remember what I did. Now, it could have been a combination of doing the drugs or drinking, but it's also when you hear people say, I saw red, I was so upset, I saw red. We're talking about blackouts. We're talking about disassociation due to their own past trauma, and they don't remember what they did. And much of that is a coping mechanism where the brain shuts down to protect the individual from further trauma that damages their psyche. And there's a whole set of research avenues that you can go down that verify that. And people don't want to spend the time learning about this dynamic because we're in a hang 'em high state. We're in Texas, and it's, lock them up and throw away the key. But for a fraction of the cost that it takes to house an individual in a prison or a jail, you could help a family recover and heal.
who do you look up to at this point? Is there someone that you admire or look up to?
Well, there was my mom, but she passed. She passed on my first day of judges school. And she always pushed me to do my best and was what's right by people. All these women that give selflessly to community to improve our lot as individuals, but also collectively as a community. And I follow their lead, and I'm looking at how hard they work and how much they volunteer and what they do. And so that kind of has just created an extension of the child my mother created out of necessity.
So along that line, what's your favorite meal? Just
Uh,
random question.
there was a restaurant, there still is, in Brownsville, Texas, and it's owned by Diane and her family, and they have the best breaded jumbo shrimp off the Gulf Coast. And when I was a kid, and all through until my mom stopped, all through school, on my birthday, my mom would leave work to come and pick me up and take me to lunch at the oyster bar and order me my dozen fried shrimp. And on the way there, she would sing, instead of happy birthday, Doris Day's Que Sera Sera to me.
And I've got to ask you a bizarre question. It's bizarre. Because his group, his name is Colin, and they love you, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And so here's one of their debates in their group. It has nothing to do with court. Grilled cheese sandwiches. Some of them think you should cook them with butter. Some of them think you should cook them with mayonnaise. Rosie.
Both, why not? But this is what I saw last night on TikTok, and
Okay.
I showed Stacy. I had never even thought of it. It's so simple. You make your sandwich
Yeah.
and you stick it in an air fryer.
Ooh,
Exactly.
okay.
Crunchy on the outside, melted cheese on the inside. It's yeah.
All right. You just blew my mind. There we go. Okay. Well, see, now we're going to share that and they're going to be like, okay, we've started a whole new thing.
Yeah, you can put mayonnaise on one side of the cheese and then, butter on the other side of the cheese, and you get the best of both worlds.
There you go. You just blew everyone's mind.
And then you stick that into an air fryer.
Air fryer, and that is so cool because then you have less fat and all that stuff, and you still get the good stuff. All right, and then just random questions because we've covered some serious stuff. We're just going to talk about a couple other things. Superpowers. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, be invisible.
See, that's mine. I like that. Well, and flying because I'm a little bit afraid if I was invisible, what I might hear people say.
Oh, that's the reason why I would love to be invisible, just to get to know the true nature of people.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was my final question that I had on paper. Is there anything, I do these shower thoughts and I try to come up with these brilliant things to say. Most of them are not brilliant. Do you have anything that I could say on there, or do you have anything for the audience that's longer than that to leave them with, to just so that they can leave with something amazing?
Yes, I'm gonna send you a YouTube link to a 15-minute mini documentary on Reflejo Court.
Okay.
And in there, I talk about my good friend, Michael Quintanilla, who is that fashion guy, but is also a volunteer on a nonprofit here in town known as the Therapeutic Justice Foundation. It was started by Judge Al Alonso, and they provide support services for all the specialty courts. And Michael's one of their board members. And one of the things he does as a board member for the Therapeutic Justice Foundation is he is the master of ceremonies for all of the specialty court graduations. Whoever wants him, he'll do it for free. And we often talk about in our circle of professionals that hurt people hurt people. Well, he flipped it and he says, well, what if we started looking at it as healed people heal people? And I love it. So when you heal somebody, they're able to heal others through their lived experience. And so that shifts your paradigm of thinking. Right? It
Right.
goes from a paradigm of victims to a paradigm of survivors. And so, if the world could just shift to supporting that paradigm of thinking, of supporting survivors, of looking at it from a standpoint where we want to heal people as part of our daily mantra, our daily paradigm, then I think we would live in a much better world.
All right, we're going to end on that, Rosie. Judge Rosie, thank you so much. I am going to put links for that and all the things we've talked about in the show notes and on the blog post. Thank you again for joining me.
Oh, I had a great time, and if you ever want me back, let's get back together. And who knows what we could do with 3 or 4 guests.
I like that. All right.
Yeah.
Wow, is she amazing or what? I don't know how one person gets that many things done. She is a rock star, and I knew you would love her. And not only that, but I've listened to her, and there is a incredible group of diverse women coming to do a panel. So subscribe, follow, do all the things so that you don't miss out on that because you are going to love it. Thank you so much for listening today. Your time is the most valuable thing you have, and I am so thankful that you chose to share it with us. Stay tuned and stay fabulous.